Downingtown Middle School Lancers, and welcome back. Today, we are going to be reviewing this year's expansion of the work protocol that we did last year. This year, the student work protocol is known as a tuning protocol, and the addition this year has to do with feedback, both cool and warm. So we're building upon the protocol from last year, where it was mostly observational, and this year we're actually adding the feedback portion, which, when we practiced at faculty meetings and during department or team meetings, is what people were asking for. So in front of you right now, you have a copy of the actual tuning protocol for student work, and you also have a copy of the work that Stacy will be sharing with us today, so you can follow along as you're watching the informative video. All of this information is posted in a folder on Schoology, so as we participate in this throughout the year, you can refer back as we go. Today, Stacy's role is the sharer of her student work. She has bravely volunteered to share her work. So she is the teacher sharing her work. I will be acting as the facilitator, and Ryan will be acting as a participant in the discussion today. So, at this time, as facilitator, I would like to review the guidelines. Be respectful of presenters. Use gentle language. Everyone contributes to the discourse, and we try to make our contributions substantive. Be appreciative of the facilitator's role, following norms, keeping time, etc. as we go, and that'll be my job as the facilitator. My job is to keep the conversation constructive and to make sure that we are not engaging in judgment making. And at the end, we want to make sure we do our debrief, okay? So as the facilitator, there are 8 parts to this process. This is our introductory process, and very quickly, I would like us to remember to put your technology away. Not you, Stacy, because you have it for your work. And let's introduce ourselves briefly.
Hello, I'm Stacy Tuckloff-Van-Zant, and I'm the World Language Curriculum Leader for the district.
I am Nick. I am the principal at Downingtown Middle.
Ryan Farrell, Assistant Principal at Downingtown Middle.
Okay, excellent. We're now going to move into part 2. This is the presentation portion where the teacher presents and the participants are going to be silent. The time for this will be between 5 and 8 minutes. Here's just a couple quick bullet points to remember. Stacy is going to be giving us the context of the lesson and the student work, what, where, when. She's going to describe the students in that class a little bit. Where are they in school? Where are they in the year? The assignment or prompt that generated the student work. Student learning goals that inform the work, samples of the work as we talked about earlier, and now the evaluation format, so how we're assessing student understanding and learning, and then the important part, and this is one of the keys for this entire protocol. It's the focusing question for feedback. Stacy comes to us with the student work. Stacy also has a focusing question. All of our feedback, both warm and cool, is going to focus on that clarifying question. As we participate in this activity, you'll notice a box at the bottom of the tuning protocol page. When Stacy shares that focusing question, you can jot that down. At this time, we're going to start time for the presentation, 5 to 8 minutes. Stacy.
Thank you, Dr. Deglio. This is a unit that we did under culture. And I started with the essential question, how does religion impact culture? The objectives were for the students to listen to my description of Dreikönigstag, which is Three Kings Day, or the Epiphany, which is celebrated in many countries, but we were focusing specifically on Germany, and it's celebrated on January 6th, the day of the Epiphany. It included a Google slide presentation, a video, and an article that conveyed relevant characteristics about the celebration. The majority of the input was in the target language, which was German. Okay. Students are expected to be able to reply to the questions with single word utterances or yes/no replies. And they were going to complete the worksheet that you have in front of you. That's page 1. And it has, you can see it has a table on it. That's what the students were given. This was in PDF format that they worked on their iPads. And the goal was that the students could complete this with 80% accuracy. And we chunked this out. The students weren't just having nothing but input. We had breaks where I would check for understanding, and then they would work they could choose to work with a partner or in groups. They could also work alone if they liked. And we would go through section by section. The way that I assessed if they were understanding was to walk around and verify that they were completing the activities, and also listen to their discussions in their groups or with their partners. Okay. And I had some cross-curricular opportunities. We talked about the history and the significance of the Epiphany celebration. We also involved a little bit of math. We were using Roman numerals. And let me see, the group of students in the classroom was a mixture. I had students in need of emotional support. I also had students with IEPs who had learning support. There were regular ed students as well as some gifted learners. And the focusing question. So the question that I would like to pose for everyone is, how could another lesson follow this one to discuss inclusivity and cultural equity if students were provided with the religious and ethnic backgrounds of the different people who live in Germany? And I'll repeat that one more time. How could another lesson follow this one to discuss inclusivity and cultural equity if students were provided with the religious and ethnic backgrounds of the different people who live in Germany? Thank you.
Okay, this concludes part 2, which is the presentation part. We're going to move on to part 3 now. Part 3 is asking clarifying questions, which will last between 2 and 3 minutes. Participants ask clarifying questions. The facilitator, me, makes sure that they are simply that, clarifying questions and nothing deeper. For example, a clarifying question is something that's matter of fact. How many students in the class? How long does the unit last? Things like that. All right, let's begin.
Stacey, did you give background on cultural equity?
I did not.
You said this was part of a lesson. What it's part of is it part of a lesson or it's part of a unit?
This is part of a lesson that I'm hoping to expand into a unit.
Okay.
How much time are you thinking or have you allocated for the unit?
I would like to make it at least 1 week.
Okay. You explained the breakdown of the number of students in your class. How many students actually in that class?
In the class where this was taught, there were 17 students.
17, okay.
And how many days did this take?
This was a single day lesson.
Okay.
Are you good with your clarifying?
I am. I feel clear.
I feel clear as well. Okay, we're now going to move on to part 4, which is the examination of the work. Stacey again has provided us with the materials that she used for her lesson. We are now going to take 3 to 5 minutes to look at the work. We're going to take notes where the work is in tune with the goals and the clarifying questions. We're going to write down our positives, and we're going to write down our suggestions, which is our warm and our cool feedback. We're going to write down some probing questions that concentrate primarily on the presenter's focusing question. At this time, the camera will fast forward into time lapse, and we will move along to the next one. The time for our examination of work has ended. Ryan, our 3 to 5 minutes.
Yes.
Okay, nice work. Now, we're going to move on to the feedback portion. The feedback portion is going to last about 10 minutes. Participants, which is Ryan and I in this sense, Stacey is going to step back and we're going to talk about her in the third person, kind of like she's not here, even though she is here. We're going to talk about the work in third person. We're going to begin with the positives, and we're going to use sentence starters like one thing I really liked. From there, we talk about the strengths as well, so the positives, the warm feedback. Then we'll move on to the cool feedback. So we'll continue with our suggestions. One suggestion might be, I wonder if, etc. Stacy, before we go to the third person, would you mind reviewing the focusing question one more time?
Certainly. How could another lesson follow this one to discuss inclusivity and cultural equity if students were provided with the religious and ethnic backgrounds of the different people who live in Germany?
Ryan, would you like to begin
That would
with
be
some
great.
warm feedback?
Well, one thing that I saw that Stacy did with this was that she created an assignment that had multiple activities, and students could demonstrate their learning in a variety of ways, which I think is key to student progress.
Okay, I'll share a strength. I noticed that there's a chance for students to use different learning styles throughout the lesson. So it's not one mode of the lesson the whole way through. And obviously, Stacy just described a class that has a lot of different needs, so she provided opportunity for students with different learning styles to approach.
So one thing that I liked in regards to that is that it was scaffolded for some of the students that may need more support. So it was structured in a way that allowed all students to access the assignment, which I thought was great.
Okay. Another strength I noticed, it seems to me, and I'm not a language teacher, but having observed many classrooms over the years, it seems that there's a very strong balance between the use of German and the use of English in the classroom.
Right.
So I thought that was a very positive, a big positive as well.
Yes.
Now that we've shared some of our positives about Stacy's work, let's look at perhaps some suggestions we may have.
So one suggestion I would need to the end, what we've been talking about is differentiating this to allow students or high achieving or gifted students an opportunity to demonstrate learning at a higher level. So maybe more of the opportunities to write or respond in German and kind of extend their thinking in that language.
Along those lines, building off of what you said, I wonder if a way to do that in order to address those higher level students who might be able to be pushed a little bit further. And I think this would also help with the students who might be struggling a little bit to increase collaboration. One of the 4 C's is, what if we used, let's say, a shared Google Doc or a shared Google Drive where students could communicate together, discussing portions of the lesson and have some information there, which would also then allow, looking at that focusing question, Stacy could actually inject feedback into that Google Doc as well, and she sees how the different groups are working together, let's say, and then can start peppering in some of that information she was talking about to get at the cultural equity and the diversity topic she wants to gear towards. You know what I mean? Like planting seeds.
Yes, that makes sense. Yeah. Set the breadcrumbs up. Yep. Very cool.
One more small suggestion. At the end, especially if Stacy were to expand a little bit technology-wise, maybe to add some additional assessment options. So what are the ways the students are showing that they learned what they needed to learn? Because I think what Stacy has set up here is a situation where mastery of this content and skill set allows that bigger discussion to happen afterwards. So the kids can't have that dialogue, you know what I mean, and get to the bigger skills to do some critical thinking about that until they understand the content there. So maybe more than one way to assess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay. This brings us to the end of the feedback portion. Now, we invite Stacy back to the table. We no longer talk about her in the third person. Now it's Stacy's turn. This is called the reflection portion. Stacy's going to talk to us. This isn't about defending what she's done. Our whole thing here is trying to build a collaborative, trusting, nice atmosphere. So some of the things Stacy could address during the session are, what has the presenter learned from the feedback? One takeaway is, what has the presenter heard that he or she may want to explore? What further interesting ideas came out of the feedback? Stacy, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of the feedback because I would really like to make this a strong and diverse unit. It started just as an idea to be a cultural exposure for my students, but as I was part of the cultural equity team last year, I was trying to examine where I could infuse that learning and opportunities for empathy and understanding to show the students about how different cultures interact with one another, and different groups of people, historically how they interact with one another, and then what today's modern interactions are. So the feedback that you gave me is going to provide me with definitely more opportunities to make this a much richer unit. One thing I really liked was that you noticed the different activities that I had. I like to mix it up during class time, so it's always a big compliment when the students will say, "Class is over already? We didn't even realize it," because they were so engaged. So it's fun for me to teach in a different, using different modalities as well. And then the biggest takeaway for me is that you noticed there was a balance between the use of German and English. Our national organization, ACTFL, the American Council for Teachers of Foreign Language, encourages and asks us to do 90% of our lessons in the target language. And this is a group of 8th graders who were in German 1. And I did do 90% of this in German. Now there was a lot of pictures, there was a lot of gestures. Cognates are words that sound similar in both languages, so you can figure out what the content's about. And I feel like the students did have a good understanding, but it's always important to me that someone who's not a language person recognizes that as well. And then the second page that everyone has is the link. It's called the Epiphany and the Sternsinger, which are the kids who dress up and they help in the celebration. And this is all in English, this article, so that helps with the understanding as well for the students, in case there were students who needed some extra time to pick up the concept or some of what we were trying to discuss. As well as you mentioned critical thinking in your feedback, Dr. Indeglio, and I feel like this part of my lesson was the tip of the iceberg. And like you said, Dr. Farrell, that they needed the input so that they could get to the point for furthering their discussion or deepening their discussion with the collaboration, perhaps via technology and a Google Doc or a Google Drive, where then we could pose the questions and intertwine that cultural equity. So I feel very, very confident that I can make this an even richer lesson. Thank you.
Okay. At this time, we're going to prepare to move on to section 7, which is the implications for teaching and learning. So in section 7, each member of the group shares how participation in the analysis can impact their own instruction. How does the conversation and everything we've done up through here impact our own instruction? Everyone has a chance to answer. As facilitator, I will start. Through the lens of the focusing question, I also tried to think about the 4 C's: critical thinking, collaboration, communication, creative problem solving. To me, what jumped out the most was the collaboration opportunities for improvement, to add more collaboration, because I feel that when you're learning a brand new language, the more interaction you have with the other students in the classroom, along with the teacher, provides opportunity. So in my mind, what I'm taking away is that the more opportunities I can work for collaboration into my own lessons, or when observing as a principal world language, I think that that's a positive if it's done well.
Great. One thing that I would take away will help me to support teachers is this was a great activity to inspire critical thinking, because the students have to think critically about the culture that they're learning, which causes them inevitably to think critically about their own culture. So I think this is a great jumping point for students to really think about things objectively and outside of their own perspective, but also bringing it back to their perspective as they learn about other cultures. So it's exciting.
I enjoy this protocol, this type of the tuning, because I really like the feedback from my colleagues. I've done 2 different ones. One was with a group of world language teachers, and then the other one was different content areas. And I'd like to say that I felt the different content areas, I felt that feedback helped me grow even more, because it was from the perspective of people who haven't, it's not their mastery to be the world language instructors, and I liked those different perspectives.
Okay. So we now move on to the final portion of the activity, section 8, which is the debrief. This is a quick part. The facilitator leads this portion, and we're just going to have an open discussion about the actual experience with this tuning protocol. We always start with the presenting teacher. So Stacy, please share with us how you felt about the experience.
I like it. I'm very comfortable doing it. I've served as a facilitator, and now I've been able to serve as a presenter. I welcome the feedback because I said I'd like to grow and make richer and more valuable lessons for my students that are definitely engaging and rigorous. I think that the structure is fantastic, but it definitely took me some time to get used to it because there are times when I'd like to reply and I'm not supposed to. So I'm getting used to that.
I think the thing I like about the new protocol, the tuning protocol, is that the teacher actually gets to start and introduce the lesson as opposed to what we did before, which was a good learning experience, kind of guessing through the content. But now we have the teacher clearly outlining what the lesson is about for us as we start. I think that just sets up a whole different set of opportunities that'll be good for everyone.
I think my two takeaways for the debrief about the experience is that even though I know you, Stacy, and I know that I don't have to couch my cool feedback very carefully for you because we have a pre-existing, we've known each other for 13 years. I mean, we go way back, so we know how to talk to each other. But I did think through the process that if we're working with teachers who maybe are new that we don't know as well, or who we know maybe has a personality that's not as open as yours, that it really is important to use the language that the protocol provides so everyone feels more comfortable. Along with the fact that we did a very small protocol today, but I do like that this gives everyone a voice. So if there were more of us sitting at the table, even those of us who aren't as verbal, they would still get an equal chance to share and ask questions and be a part. And I do think that's important.
Yes, and learning from people that you wouldn't necessarily work with on a regular basis, right? So,
Okay. All right, so that concludes our tuning protocol experience for the day. Once again, this video will be available in the Schoology page along with the materials from Stacy's lesson, a copy of the tuning protocol, and this entire experience. The first part opened with you reviewing the PowerPoint, which kind of takes you through how the process works. So hopefully this entire activity today has given you a good introduction. We'll be doing these 5 times through the year at faculty meetings, but the administrative team is going to be using them as well when we do our department meetings and or team meeting type experiences. So not every time, but when it's relevant, we want you to think about that.